In the past month, my older brother's fiancée left him. This meant he lost his house because the home they lived in was in her name. He lost his vehicle because what he was driving was her old car. He also lost his job because he was so focused on his breakup that he was constantly making mistakes. He moved in with our parents, who live about 5 minutes away from my husband and I. I do have a lot of sympathy for him. He literally has nothing, no home, no car, no job, no relationship. The problem is, this is third time this has happened to him. That's right, he has had 3 fiancées leave him now, and every time he winds up losing everything. He has had 2 cars impounded because he gets so upset over his breakups he loses his job and can't make payments on his vehicles. My parents and I have bailed him out of these situations every time. I even paid off his back payments on his car, paid for his dog's vet bills, and paid some of his rent before. My parents and I have literally spent thousands of dollars trying to help him. Each of the past 2 times he winds up moving back in with my parents, who are in their late 60s. While we pay for everything for him, whenever he goes through a breakup he becomes a total jerk. He spends every weekend with his friends out camping or vacationing. How he pays for it I have no idea. After the second fiancée, he took a trip to Fiji with his friends but couldn't afford to pay his rent. He mostly ignores me unless he needs money, which, during this breakup, I am refusing to help him out at all. The worst part is he treats my parents like garbage. If they ask him questions like, "Have you been looking for a job?" he will yell at them. He has no problem eating the food they provide for him and living in their house rent and utility free. And driving my mom's brand new car, which she got because he totaled her last car, but makes them absolutely miserable. My mom told me he will yell at them, call her stupid, trashes their house, sleeps all day, and leaves the care of his dog up to them. Every time I see my mom lately, it's obvious that she's been crying. The most recent event took place on Sunday. In an attempt to get him out of the house for a while, I offered to take him out in our boat. He seemed super excited about it, and when he's excited he can actually be a lot of fun to be around. He tells me he's hanging out with friends but will be back in town Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon rolls around and he's nowhere to be seen. I get a text around 6 p.m. that he's decided to go to a local tourist destination with all his friends. They are going to tube down a river. I'm bummed because I was honestly looking forward to it, and because my brother has once again chosen his friends over his family. But it's whatever, I honestly don't rely on him for anything, so it's not that big of a deal. But then I find out he's driving my mom's car and she has to be in her office early Monday morning. Then the peaceful protests in our town turn into full-on riots, and my brother is still not home. At this point he can't get home because they've blocked off access to our town, so he just stays with his friends, and I wind up taking my mom to work. My dad tries to talk to my brother on Monday about how irresponsible he was, and my brother just yells at him, and then locks himself in my parents' basement for the rest of the day. My parents are miserable. They want to help and have always said they will do anything for us kids. But they are just enabling my brother every time they bail him out. My dad has major health problems that are being exacerbated by the stress my brother is causing. My mom has a history of severe depression that I see her slipping back into the longer my brother is with them. I'm really close to my parents, and they are usually very fun people. The longer my brother stays with them, I am seeing them become depressed, short-tempered, and miserable. I tried telling them to kick him out. One of his friends would surely take him in. But they insist that they don't want to leave him homeless. I can't convince them to kick them out, but is there anything else I can say or do that might get my brother to get his head out his ass and get a job? How can I get my brother to see his behavior towards my parents is unacceptable? It just sucks. I used to really look up to my older brother because he is outgoing and funny and the sort of person everyone just gravitates towards. Now I'm just pissed at him for how he treats my parents and simultaneously scared for his mental health, because he clearly has a lot of problems. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. This all went down about an hour ago and my wife is still crying in our bathroom with the door locked. Backstory, we had our son, now 11 months old, while my wife is in residency. She took a few weeks off before giving birth, and then went back to work a few months after. While I transitioned my hours to part-time so that I could stay at home and raise our son, my mom moved in with us shortly after the birth in order to help out, which allows me to get in a few hours of work per day and also not get swamped with taking care of the baby / housework. She's quite old-fashioned and would definitely not prefer this arrangement with me being a stay-at-home dad. But she hasn't said anything to either of us and has been a great help. For anyone unfamiliar with medical residency, it is brutal. My wife has just over a year left. Sometimes she comes and goes for 1 to 3 days and our son is asleep the whole time she's home, which has been happening more as his sleep schedule shifted to sleeping through the night. My mom and I make sure that when she's home and the baby is awake, my wife gets him 100%. I know it's been hard on her, but unfortunately it's just going to be this way for another year. The first big milestone she missed was him rolling over. When she got home, my mom pulled her over to the baby all excited. I thought she was going to tell her, but instead she says, "Julie, you came home right on time. He's been moving about as if he's going to roll over." They both stood there encouraging him, and right on cue he rolls. My wife was elated. She was so worried and guilty about not being there, and she took it as proof that she can still be a present mother while working. So we continued. I send texts over little things she misses through the day so that it's not completely unbelievable. But my wife has been present for every single big milestone. He coincidentally started crawling with her right there. His first words were in front of her, and he began standing, cruising, and walking when she happened to be home. The walking one was difficult. There was a tough 7-day stretch where she just wasn't home during the daytime when he was awake. And his walking went from teetering to walking a couple steps pretty confidently in that time. We put little bean bags in one of his pants pockets so he'd be wobbly and unbalanced, and it looked believable, since he fell after the first step like he was doing a week ago. Yes, it was mean to our poor son, but my wife's face was worth it. Today it all unraveled. So far he can just say mama, dada, and nana. Yesterday he started saying, "Bye, bye." My wife has today off and has been home all morning. My mom and I have been trying to get him to say, "Bye," all day without giving it away that we already know he can say,
bye,
successfully got him to say
bye
to the ducks at the park, and we both gushed over his newest word the whole way home. My wife was using my phone to take pictures of him and began showing my mom at home while telling her about his newest word acquisition. She was swiping through my gallery and saw a video from yesterday and goes, "Oh, you never sent me this one." It was literally like a slow motion film happening in front of my eyes. I had taken the video of him yesterday waving
bye, bye.
My wife isn't stupid, she figured the whole ruse out pretty much instantly. I've never seen her look so upset and heartbroken before. I couldn't say or do anything to comfort her. Now she's locked herself in the bathroom crying and won't come out. I am a 35 years old female. I don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she dyed her hair purple just like mine, and when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked. She actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country, tourism in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come. Even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, "Fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her." Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was cancelled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy.